The theme for this year is the Pulse of Possibility, chosen because it brings together all of the different stakeholders in Southern Africa. So today here at the event, we have representatives from not only the banks in South Africa, but also representatives from the key banks and customers in Zimbabwe, Zambia, Angola, Namibia, and so on. And so over and above our more traditional customers like the banks, we also have stakeholders here from the retail community. We have stakeholders here from the fintech community that play such an important role in enabling infrastructure that we need to drive digitization across the continent, which is critical to us. And over and above all of that, we also include some of the stakeholders from the broader telco community and people that represent interested parties from in and around the payments ecosystem. We started working with the South African Reserve Bank a number of years ago, and the premise around that engagement was an understanding of how do we drive access. And when you think about access, it doesn't come together if we don't invest in infrastructure and make sure that the broadest sector of the population is financially included. And what does that mean? It means that you and I can exchange value digitally without us having to touch paper notes, and we need to do so at a very cost-effective way and in a way that is accessible and understandable to you. And so a number of years ago, we've invested in infrastructure in South Africa that now allows us to take card on that same journey. And it's a journey that promises to bring real-time payments across the card ecosystem and make sure that this access we speak about comes together for all of the different stakeholders within the broader ecosystem. So yes, that's the broader thematic around digitization, but it's an understanding of those areas where we need to drive investment that enables all of these customers that we have here today, including the banks and telcos and retailers, to be able to transact and provide solutions to their customers. I think that, traditionally when people talk about South Africa, they say, well, the country is financially included because, 85% of people has a bank account. But the reality is, if you listen to the narrative coming from the South African Reserve Bank and you talk to people on the ground, a lot of times those are proxy accounts. It's used as a mechanism to withdraw cash. And all of the rest of the value exchange that happens is affected in cash. Now, downstream, it has an implication because if you run a small or a micro enterprise and you need, for example, access to capital, how do you prove to somebody that you are credit ready and that you should be granted credit in order to buy the stock that you need, to sell to the people that in and around your own community? And that's an example. A second example is infrastructure, right? So when we talk about access, we talk about the ability for me to sell the products that I make within the community that I live in. But wouldn't it be incredible if you are able to be based in the Northern Cape, but you can sell into communities in KwaZulu-Natal, or you're able to, sell your produce in Zimbabwe or in Zambia out of South Africa, or vice versa. And so part of the role that we're playing when we talk about financial inclusion is to create that same level of utility, whether it's credit that you require, whether it's access to market that you require, or whether from a financial health perspective, we need the tools to drive your business and equip, yourself and the people that work for you to run those businesses more effectively. We talk about, for example, the growth of acceptance locations, the ability to pay with a card. And around about the COVID time frame, South Africa only had 600,000 point of sale devices in country. That number this year is going to end at about 2.5 million. The reason for that growth is we've got this very young and vibrant digitally native generation starting to come through that is actually not interested to stand in queues on a Friday afternoon. They're not interested to go and stand at a money market counter to pay a bill. They want to do so at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night on the couch, And so we need to meet the consumers where they're at. We need to be able to allow people to pay how they want, when they want, and where they want. And in order to do that, we needed to take a broader look at how do we meet the consumer and provide those services where they're at. So there's a lot of work that we're doing to make sure that you can use your cell phone to effect payment purchases. We We're working with the border merchant community to make sure that there is card-based acceptance, that you can use it online, that you can use it in-app. And we make sure that it's provided in a secure way that is easy to understand, but it's convenient enough to access wherever you are. So that's one. The second thing that we're doing is beyond just thinking about that purchase transaction, is how do we allow people that want to send money home to do that easily? So how do we think about that cross-border transfer and value exchange? And how do we make sure that we work with the right entities that can bring all of these disparate communities together, that you're able to exchange value more freely, and you're able to do so in a much more instant and immediate way? If you were to look at the makeup of Africa today, and you consider that the digital economy will grow to about $1.5 trillion by 2030, it's all going to be driven by the youth. We have the economists here this morning at the Endava that spoke about the population growth trajectory over the next 10 years. The majority of that growth comes from Africa. So this is the place to be.